Calling this meeting to order, Monday, August 19th, 6 p.m. Crosby, do roll call, please.
Mike.
Here.
Jake.
Here.
Gail.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Eric.
Here.
Vito.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Crosby here. Do we have Carolyn? Or
She's virtual.
Okay. Carolyn will be joining shortly.
Hey, is this Lisa? I think. Lisa?
I don't know. Can't read it.
Elisa?
Okay, please join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. Get your sheet. All right. Up next is citizens' comments.
Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make his or her comments. We will signal you when you are at the 2.5-minute mark to begin to wrap up your comments. We expect all speakers to honor the time limit, refrain from using inappropriate language, and be respectful in their comments. Citizens who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future board/committee meetings. Speakers are to address the board, not the audience. The school board does not endorse any comments made by members of the community here tonight. We would like to remind our community members of the impact of their words on others, and our children are also watching. We commit to listening to you in a respectful manner and ask that you do the same. We expect the audience will be respectful of the speakers and of the board and refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, or behavior that will detract from the meeting. If proper decorum is not adhered to, the board president can suspend citizens' comments. Please note that no obstructions can be created between the board and the audience. Visual aids cannot be used, and the area behind the speaker will be clear during public comment. Also, to respect our speakers and meeting participants, please silence your cell phones. Thank you. Mr. Rick Whitty.
Yes, this is on. Great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Rick Whitty. I'm a member of this community. Grew up here, lived here my entire life. I also work here. I teach and coach at the high school. I've got 5 kids that go to this great school, these great schools as well. And I'm not here to reiterate what Dr. Joe Cook and Tom Karthauser have already laid out as great arguments as to why we need a new middle school. But I am here to just support the idea of the referendum moving forward in one way, shape, or form in the future. And so, not to get into the details that they've already mentioned, all I can do is speak to what it means to me and how it's symbolic in my life. And the way I see our Parkview Middle School, it's a northern entrance to our community. So when other schools come and compete with, let's say, the high school, me being a teacher and a coach at the high school, I'm talking Oconomowoc, the Arrowheads, the Kettle-Moraines, the Waukesha Wests. When they come from the north, they see a liquor store, gas stations, fast food chains, and a 70-year-old middle school. Nothing against the fine businesses that I've mentioned, but definitely something against the 70-year-old building that serves as space for our children in this community. And so, and spaces matter, and Mukwonago's always done that. And there are people like me who are sitting in this room who have come back to raise their families in this community. It could be our slogan, really, like, we come back. And why do we come back? Because we felt this place raised us. That's why I'm here. It's my time to give back to a community that raised me. And a lot of us feel that same way, and I think we need to make sure that we continue that and we create another generation of kids who want to bring their families back here because they were taken care of. And we have an opportunity to do that with the middle school. I mean, what a way to have people come in, again, from the north, like so many do, and to communicate to everybody what we value here in this community. And we value our kids. We value their futures. And we can do that with a space there that communicates that, and we just don't have that quite yet. And great spaces matter, right? Other schools are doing this too, by the way. Our surrounding communities, they're doing this. They're ahead of us. We've fallen behind before. Again, I'm well aware of Mukwonago's history. I've been here my entire life. We've caught up a bit with our high school. I think there's still some work to be done there, but that's great. Our middle school is just far behind. So it's an opportunity for us to catch up a little bit. And then on top of the spaces where
30 seconds, Rick.
kids spend time, like they get to go to the schools, put their phones away for 8 hours, and work with each other, learn how to become better humans, explore what they want to do with their futures. Those spaces should be the shining lights of our community. We want our kids to want to come back to those spaces. I know there are challenges, financially, politically, but that just means maybe we got to get a little bit more creative. So last thing I'll say is I'm not sure if this ballot is the best timing for a referendum. I think maybe we retool, rethink, and then get a little bit more creative on the next time around. Thank you for everything you do, by the way, as a professional and member of this community. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coach Woody, by the way, how long has your mom been teaching math at Parkview?
76 years.
Good.
38 years? Amen.
All right. Thanks again.
Next up is Eliza Pouts.
I do apologize, I didn't have a lot of time to prep for this, so I bullet pointed a few things and I'll try to spitball as best I can. My name is Eliza Pouts. I am a very involved member of the community, and I was originally on the focus group that delved into the issues of the school district at large.
I'm
And
sorry, can you pull the mic, put the mic closer to your mouth? Thank you.
you're welcome.
Much better.
So I would agree that the middle school does need to be upgraded. Off of what Rick was saying, I currently have a sophomore and a 7th grader in the school district. I know firsthand what limitation that building has. The fact that the 6th graders socially, emotionally, and educationally would benefit from peers that challenge them is huge. Last year, my son, by the end of the year, did not understand why the rules that the kindergartners followed, he also had to be in tune with. And explaining that to him on a level that a 6th grader can understand was hard. I think that this referendum does need to take place, but this feels forced if we are going to try to have it on the ballot in November. Trying to do a remodel of an existing building would be extremely difficult. I realize that we're trying to save money, and by doing so, a remodel would make most sense. But in the end, you're going to end up spending more money long-term if you don't try to do a referendum that would allow a new building to be constructed. I personally tried explaining this topic multiple times when the last referendum was coming through. Several individuals that live in the school district, I have a couple direct quotes, stated that there was no true need for a middle school to spend more money to make another, and I quote, Taj Mahal like the high school. Those people did not understand that what they were referencing was actually a foundation that presented the money, and it did not come through taxpayers. Another one was, why do the 6th graders all of a sudden need to be in the middle school when my kids did just fine in elementary school? Obviously, times have changed. Social settings have adjusted. I think that these are key points that need to be addressed if we go through with another referendum. In addition, the village is increasing our taxes. So what is
Eliza,
the plan?
30 seconds.
What is the plan for addressing the fact that now the high school, yes, that referendum, those monies are going to be paid off sooner, but how are we going to address the fact that people didn't understand our taxes really wouldn't be going up that much? In my opinion, the board, school officials, and district employees will need to start a grassroots effort. Employees will need to speak at sporting events and be present for questions. Media attention will need to be sought. You'll have to try other routes not previously tried so that you can reach all of the taxpayers. Be transparent and thorough.
Time's up, Eliza.
All right.
You want to finish?
Yeah, my last point was just that if this isn't something that can be accomplished in 2.5 months, then a plan needs to be drawn out prior to seeking a referendum on a ballot. That was it.
Thank you.
all for all you do. I understand. It's not easy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, action item is up.
So this evening, we have 2 items on the agenda. One is the initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $89.1 million. And the second one is a resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $89.1 million. So both resolutions need to be entertained tonight by the board and voted on by the board. We have the information that we have presented to the board and to the community over the last several months available to talk through tonight and answer any questions that the board might have on these resolutions.
Greg?
$7.4 million is needed at Parkview. Andy, Tom, is that correct?
Correct.
And over what time frame?
I'd say anywhere from, 5, 7, 10 years. Some projects can be deferred 1 or 2 years. Sometimes they're needed earlier. I'd call that 5 to 7 year window.
Okay. I can't read my writing here. The current referendum will be paid off, if we do nothing, will be paid off when?
Joe, can I borrow your microphone so you can do this? Can you hear me here? The current referendum would be paid off. The last levy would take place in fall of 2026. So we have a levy this year, a levy next year in 2025, and then one more in 2026. So if you take a look at the screen right now, the purple bars, again, the turquoise bars represent what the payments we locked in at. The purple represents what we actually paid off. And then those light purple ones at the end there, you can see there's 1, 2, and a smaller third levy that would take place over this year and the coming 2. So it would be paid off at that point there.
So,
I don't mean to cut you off, but we need a motion and a second
Oh.
to continue for
Sorry.
conversation. Sorry.
go ahead. Good call.
What is the motion for? Is it to move forward now, or? like,
Whatever
what
your
exactly?
motion wants to be.
All right, well, then I make a motion that we hold off and do a referendum in the spring of 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Gail?
Holding
Talk to the microphone, Gail.
Okay. Holding off will make the cost will keep going up for actually doing anything, right?
Yes.
So if we hold off till April, by then even, we could be looking at different dollar amounts for doing anything on the building. So that's a question. I mean, I just see every delay, more dollars will be spent, will be needed just because everything keeps rising in costs. So that to me is a downside of waiting till April.
Crosby?
One down.
Go ahead, Crosby.
Say this were to pass in November, when would we break ground? When would this start versus if we did this in April?
So I'm going to invite some, am I on here? All
Yes.
right. We have Matt Wolfert from Gray Architects who can help explain the timeline here. Go ahead, Matt.
Good evening. Great question. So if a referendum is approved in November, we would start construction in the spring of 2026. So about a year-ish of design, engineering, all the work that goes into planning and designing a building of this type, along with local permitting and state permitting, would occur during that roughly 12-month time frame. Bid the project and then come out of the ground in the spring of 2026 with construction.
And what about spring then? If we did a spring referendum, what would the turnaround be?
So what you end up facing is you basically consider the same thing, roughly a year of design and engineering. So we would be looking at bidding in the spring of 2026. Bear with me if I get these years wrong. Somebody correct me. So we would start construction in the spring of 2026. But the negative is we're in a less than ideal bid environment. So right now, the best case scenario is that you bid something late in the calendar year, or say January or February, to come out of the ground in April. If you bid in, what we would be doing if we push to spring, we would bid in, let's just say April. You're not starting till May. A lot of contractors are busy at that point. They're full, they've got work, And you typically, I can't say this unequivocally, right? It's all conjecture, but you typically aren't going to see as many bidders or the level of competitiveness on the bids because of that quick turnaround from I'm awarded a contract in May and I have to start construction a month later. We're better off saying award in December or January and they start in March or April. That has changed. 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said that. I would have said we can always bid and start right away. There's plenty of labor, plenty of people. Just isn't the case right now. So that's the difference. And we also just incur some additional inflation, as was mentioned. Construction inflation is typically in the neighborhood of 4 to 5%. Obviously, it varies. We saw extremes a couple years ago. But historically, there's only been one time in the last 25 years during the last recession where we saw a slight downturn, and it was just for 1 year. Those were very lucky clients who had borrowed the money and happened to find the ability to go out to bid during a recession. Obviously, nobody can plan that. So big picture, the other part is you're entering into more winter construction costs. So when we start later, we have more work that's going on during the, let's just say, November to March timeframe that we'd be able to get done earlier if we can come out of the ground right away in March. So no definitive exactly what the impact would be, but there's no doubt that if you believe inflation in the construction industry is going to remain as it has historically remained, there will be slightly higher cost, and we would likely delay opening of the building by 4 to 6 months.
Vito?
How firm are the bids? As in, is there a provision in there for like material increases? If it's a year between the time that it's bid and that it's actually started, do they have to stick with the numbers that they had, or do they get to increase the cost based on material increases?
No, they have to lock in. So they are bidding on a project with a fixed cost to do the work based on when it is. So the JP Cullen team and the Bray team would put out a very detailed schedule as to when things are going to happen. And the benefit of commercial construction is, let's just say the plumber is going to go out and bid the toilet fixtures and piping and things. They know roughly when they need to procure and install those materials, and they're actually going to lock those prices in right after they're awarded. They're not going to wait to buy the materials until a month before they need them, for example. So no, the district has no risk there.
Gooch?
As far as the loan, if it was approved, does the school district take on the 89 million or whatever it was immediately, or is it like in chunks? In other words, is there a time frame that maybe if rates went down, interest rates went down, we'd have a significant savings kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question there. We don't have to take it in a chunk, and typically we don't. As I mentioned at the last meeting, school districts are going to typically borrow 10 million, and then the remainder. The 10 million, when a public bond is issued and the amount is 10 million or less, it becomes bank qualified, and there creates more competition. So you're typically going to borrow 10 million first, and then the remainder later. But you'll time it up in such a manner that you do not start accruing interest costs immediately. It's a balancing act of knowing how to play the market and locking in at an interest rate when you feel that it's as low as it can get. But at that same time, you don't want to lock in like the next day, because then you're going to start to accrue interest costs when your bills aren't due for quite some time. So as we talked about the design stage taking 12 months, your major bills will be coming through once design is complete, and then you start to do the construction itself. So once you start breaking ground and the workers are there, that's when bills start to come through. I'm sure, Kurt, that's your experience in working with other school districts. So no, you don't take on the debt immediately.
Thank you.
One of the things that we did hear from the community when we were presenting in this last April was the preference of doing a November election due to the turnout. Most of the community has turned out. When we looked back at the last 2 presidential elections in our community, we found it was between 25 and 27,000 votes within our district boundaries. When the high school passed in 2016, it was about 13,000, and when we had the vote last April, it was just shy of 10,000. So for perspective and just in response to what we heard from the community, that's why we positioned ourselves for tonight.
Eric?
Joe, when is spring break?
The week before the April election next year. So the exact dates, it lines that we we're off through that Sunday, we come back on Monday, and then the vote would be that Tuesday. Similar timeline to what we had this past April.
So I heard from a bunch of people that they just weren't in town this past April to vote for anything. So I think that takes away some of the parents that are involved and that do want this project to go on. They're on vacation, they just simply can't vote.
Early voting.
And they could, sure.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I may have missed this. What would the difference between the completion dates be, November versus April? And, well, I guess I'll wait. So just the completion date.
Yeah, to be fair, we have not mapped out an April total time frame at this point, but to be fair, I'm guessing it's gonna be in the neighborhood of 6 months later. Might be slightly less. We can play with bid packages and accelerating. I don't wanna put a definitive date out because we have not kind of game played out what an April looks like.
So that'd be like November, potentially?
Yeah, that's.
Would we even transition into, I guess, how would that work, Joe? If it were to be finished like mid-school year like that?
We would have to look at a move-in type schedule that would allow for that. And then again, depending on the scope of the project, again, we're looking at, the current project has us renovating about 30,000 square feet of the current building, the 1993 construction, and then doing somewhere, I believe it was in the ballpark of 200,000 square feet plus of new construction. So the idea of there is a renovation component of it, but it's mostly new construction included in this 89.1 million. So to get kids in, the November timeline is such that we would essentially be starting school on the first day in a new building. The other one would be, we'd be slowly moving in and trying to transition in as phases of the building were done. And we would go through the list and be move-in ready.
Yeah, you likely end up with some form of a unique but achievable kind of holiday break move where kids leave for the holiday break and come back in the new space. And anything's doable. I don't want to sit here and act like it isn't, but that's just another complication. It's surely a lot easier to come back to school on September 2nd or 3rd in your new space and allow staff that time to transition over the summer months.
And that's what the November election allows?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
And just a clarification on the 89.1, if we were to do the same project, we would essentially have to go back and relook at the figures in the spring due to any potential inflationary increase.
Yeah, I would off the cuff guess 2 to 3%, depending on how things shake out.
Crosby?
So I fully support this project. But when I was talking to friends, family, people in the community over the weekend, I mean, I've spent my entire week thinking about this. I've looked at it from every angle. I see pros and cons of doing it now. I see pros and cons of doing it in the spring. And everybody that I spoke to over the past week has said, can you just wait until April? There's fear of what's going to happen with the presidential election. There's concerns about what taxes are going to look like, not just in the village, but in the town as well, and other communities that are looking at doing building referendums. We've talked about all of this, right? I honestly don't know what the right answer is, and I will fully admit that. I really don't know what the best decision is at this point. But everybody I talked to over the past week has said, please wait until April.
Vito?
I'd echo what she says. So I obviously go on record. I want to get this done just as much as everybody else. I think we only have one more shot, and that's my fear, because if we rush in and we don't have the time to make sure that we get the message out and get people to understand how important it is, and we get nothing. And as far as when it comes to the risk of not waiting a little bit longer, costing a little bit more, or not getting anything, or having to wait 3, 5, or 10 years until it becomes okay for people to accept it again, or it just makes sense to wait and try to get it done when we have more time to make sure we have the best chance to get it done.
So, Gail, I do like when you talk, Gail, because people listen. You're like E.F. Hutton, and as an ex-teacher, you bring a lot to the thinking part of this board. But Vito and what Vito and Crosby said about timing, I too have spent all weekend or a lot of the weekend talking to people about this, more than almost any other subject. And what Eliza said today about being force-fed or being forced or kind of jamming it down their throat, people want to see a tax bill. I don't think they understand the reassessment of the values of our homes and property in Mukwonago. T-Card, my opinion is they want to see a tax bill. And it's not going to be horrible because we are conservative, we are fiscally responsible, but people need to see that. That's my opinion. I'm with Vito and Crosby.
Carolyn, do you have anything to add?
Update's not done.
No, she's here.
Okay.
She's muted.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. President, may I just, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think if we don't do it in November, I think we push it maybe even until next fall. I think if somebody opens a tax bill in January or December, are they gonna wanna add to that in 3 months, 4 months? I think it's doubtful.
Fall's not an option, right?
Yeah, fall 25's not an option.
Yeah, that, we have.
When would be the next option?
We have spring of '25, we have spring of '26, and then November of '26. So those are the times when we have an election that we could pair on to.
Yeah, I think if you get a new bill that's coming in and you're just open that a couple months and now you're gonna add to it, I think that people are gonna push back on that as well. Just my thought.
Was that Carolyn?
Yeah, I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
I kept clicking on it and it wouldn't unmute. Sorry.
Do you have anything you
Can you
want to
hear me?
add? Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like I'm very torn along with everybody on whether to go forward or not. If I had to pick, I would say wait till spring or wait till the following fall. But I'm like 51-49 as far as my split there. I think taking advantage of the turnout that we're going to have in the election is going to be huge. Not only is that going to bring more people to the polls, by bringing more people to the polls, we're going to get a better answer. So if it is a definitive yes or a definitive no, we're going to see a really good response and have a good vibe for maybe we hold off for, if it's a no, we hold off for a few years. If it's a yes, woohoo, we did it. But those kind of my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Jake?
Do we have data that shows the type of difference a presidential election makes versus a spring?
Yeah, during the presidential cycle, there's a 73 or 74% success rate, and I think that number drops down into the upper 50s, lower 60s in the April cycle over the last 25 years.
So I think that's something to consider as well.
Any other questions or comments? Gail?
I will support whatever, but my heart goes with doing it in November because I'm going on 72 and I feel like life always throws things at you and you just got to do what's right and do it. And so for me, it's like everything about the kids, the space, it all outweighs the dollars. And maybe we can get the township, figure out a way to share better how their tax bill will not be as horrible as they think from what's happening in the locally too, that way. Maybe we can figure out a way in the next couple of months to do that better with people, make it a part of it. But I will support whatever, but I'm for November.
Gooch?
So I agree with so much of what everyone has said. Obviously, I've walked through that school, me and Eric most recently as new board members, and it needs to get fixed. Something needs to get done. I am absolutely convinced we do not have enough time to get the word out of why this is so important. And once we go in November, if we do this and it's a no, they won't listen. As a taxpayer myself, 10 years ago when I would come to a board meeting, my mind would shut off. All they want to do is raise taxes. All they want to do is raise taxes. So it's like we could have a better campaign to shed light on why we need this if we wait till April. Yes, it's a smaller amount of people going to the polls, but my opinion is we're rushing it and we just do not have enough time to shed all the light on this that we can.
Any more questions or comments? Jake?
Some more comments. I definitely hear what everybody is saying as well. I know we're all, it's good. I think we all generally support it, right? We're just kind of talking about timing here. But I'm going to go back to, I think the presidential election, the turnout makes a difference. We're going to hear what the people really want with the greater turnout. I think that, you know, in addition to that, this proposal, like I said last week, it's fundamentally different than the one we had before. I mean, it's both in cost and the interest rates that we're dealing with. It's a different proposal with a different impact. And even the survey results, I know we lost 2%, you know, on the initial estimated support rate on the survey, but the intensity of the support seemed to improve both with people that had students in the district and also with those that didn't. So the intensity of the support improved a bit. And we also had a sample size that was about 30%, I'm just estimating larger, right? So I realize we had issues with the last survey, but I do feel this one's probably gonna be a little more accurate. It's a little more dialed in. So I get it. I hear what everybody's saying, you know, like Carolyn, I'm 51-49, but probably on the other side, suggesting that we move forward in November.
Joe, do you think we have time to get the word out if we went forward in November, to get people into the middle schools, to get photos of the locker rooms that are shared, being shared as spaces with the curtains up and stuff like that? You think we got time to push information out?
Yeah, I mean, this is a continuation. I mean, it is a revised project for what we went forward in April, but it is a continuation of the work. The need is still the middle school. A year, you know, essentially a year later, the pictures are essentially the same pictures. We have the space needs. The tour, you know, when we get people into the building, they can see, you know, what you're speaking of shared spaces, instructional spaces, the flow of the building, the flow of the lunchroom. All of that is something that's doable in a two and a half month window. When we went back to the April vote, we really didn't start our campaign to sell that until January. And again, we're talking about the same need, minus the 4-year-old kindergarten discussion that we had going into the April vote.
That said, I think the 4K kind of turned a lot of people off, from the people that I spoke with at least.
And we heard that as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. President, may
Hey, me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carolyn.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Yeah, I think the amount of time that's been put into this, I don't know who was talking when they said it feels rushed. I feel like maybe it feels rushed because we're close. We're getting close to November, but this has been years of research that previous boards, even before I started, have put into planning for this, and hours upon hours of maps and graphs and everything that Tom has put in for all this research. So I don't feel like it has been rushed at all. I feel like it's been a very methodical, well thought, well planned decision. I think taking advantage of the turnout in the election, I think that's going to just be huge. I mean, I get it. If we get a no, we get a no, but what if we don't take the chance and ask? Because it clearly has support. We are close. That's it.
Can I just ask one question
yes.
about the motion? So just for clarity, the motion that's on the table is to not go in November of '24, but to go in April of '25.
Correct.
So just for clarity, are we voting on a yes or no of that and then guidance to go for April? Because I think the thing that we have to be cautious about is there's a specific dollar amount attached to this resolution, and that can't just get forwarded along. That would be something that we'd have to go back, work with the team on and say, is it 89.1 or does that become 92.3? Just because of the numbers on it.
Okay, so you want to amend your resolution to move in the referendum question to April? So we can bring it back up and get the cost.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one more thing. So, we all agree it has to happen.
Yes.
All the experts say it, if we want it to happen, we all want it to happen. If it's gonna happen, November seems to be the time to do it. Is that, yeah, is that correct? Is that an assumption, or is that just a
That's a gut feeling.
gut feel?
That is everybody's gut feeling, I think. I got a gut feeling the other way.
I just think it's great that would be more community members voting on it.
Because we're all on the fence. And we all want this. We all think it's needed. This isn't fluff. This isn't Taj Mahal. This is something our kids really need. I think Gail changed my mind a little bit. And I didn't think I'd say this tonight, but I'm thinking different now. If we have one shot to do this, really, I don't know.
Anything else, Carolyn?
No.
No. Okay. Eric?
And to be fair, we don't know what the rates are gonna do, right? The rates could get worse, something could happen in the election, I mean, we just don't know. We just gotta deal with what we have and what Tom has given us. With the $96 for a $400,000 house, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Rates are dropping, baby.
Vito, would you want to still second that motion? I'm moving the referendum question to April.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Oh, Jake, you have something else?
I just want to make sure I'm clear. So it's to revisit in April or actually move?
We'll do the same thing. It'll be an action item coming spring.
To delay the decision, correct?
Correct, yes. So we have motion and a second, and the motion is to delay the decision on this until spring. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Second. We need a roll call. Yes,
Oh,
thank you.
yep.
All right. Mike,
Aye.
Jake,
Nay.
Gail,
Nay.
Dale,
No.
Eric,
Nay.
Vito,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Nay.
Craig,
Nay.
Crosby, yes.
Next motion.
6-3. The motion fails. So then we're going to look for a motion on the action item that's presented to you in front of you about going to referendum in November.
I'd like to make a motion that we move to referendum in November.
Could I ask that you read the full resolution by title in support of? Sounds like that's the direction you're going, so we need the full resolutions read. Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Pulling that email up. If someone else wants to make it, they can. I'm looking for the email.
So if I could just speak for you here, Carolyn, let me know if you're okay with this. You'd like to support make a motion to pass the initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $89.1 million.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. In November.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Both of them? We both did. You can pick.
You can have it.
We're so cordial.
Any more questions or comments on the motion on the floor? All right, all those in favor?
Oh, it's gotta be a roll call.
Oh, roll call. All right.
I got my sheet ready.
Yes, you do.
Mike,
Yes.
Jake,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Vito,
No.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Craig,
Yes.
Crosby, no.
Motion carries. All right, we are moving on to B, action item B.
So action item B, I just want to read the resolution, the referendum details. And so the referendum details in B, just so that it is in the record. At an election in the Mukwonago Area School District on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, the following question will be submitted to a vote of the people. Shall the Mukwonago Area School District, Waukesha, and Walworth Counties, Wisconsin be authorized to issue pursuant to Chapter 67 of the Wisconsin statutes, general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $89,100,000 for the public purpose of paying the cost of a school building and facility improvement projects consisting of construction of an addition and renovations to the Parkview Middle School building and demolition of a portion of the existing building, district-wide capital maintenance, infrastructure and site improvements, and acquisition of furnishings, fixtures, and equipment.
Thank you. All right, we're on to action item B.
So as we move forward here, we're looking for somebody to support the resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $89.1 million. This one goes hand in hand with the first one. So really, if you're passing one, you must pass
Correct.
both. There's really no difference. This is a legality. So if you support the first one, you likely support the second one, but I don't want to speak for anyone.
I move to support. Like you said.
I was gonna say, you don't have to say it all, do you?
Yeah, I was like, I have to say that all.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and second to approve the resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $89,100,000. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mike,
Yes.
Jake,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Vito,
No.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Craig,
Yes.
Crosby, no.
Motion carries. We're looking for a motion.
Motion to
for-
adjourn.
What's that?
To adjourn.
What's that?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.